You've seen it 1,000 times in movies, right? A witness is on the stand, the lawyer leans in, the tension is just electric. But behind all that drama, there's this incredible, complex set of rules working to keep everything on track. Today, we're diving into the one rule that literally stands between a fair trial and absolute, total chaos.
So what is it? What's the one thing that stops a lawyer from just, pulling a rabbit out of a hat in their closing speech, completely blindsiding a witness and turning a trial into a trial by ambush? It's this fundamental principle of fairness, and it's all about making sure everyone gets a fair shot at the truth. Let's get into it.
Okay, so before we can get to the rule itself, we've got to understand the tool that it keeps in check: cross-examination. And trust me, it's so much more than just creating those big, dramatic, you can't handle the truth moments. It has some very specific and very powerful legal goals.
Generally, cross-examination has three main jobs. First up, you're trying to get facts out of the witness that actually help your case. Second, and this is the one we see in movies all the time, you want to cast doubt on their story, maybe find some inconsistencies. And third, it's a bit more subtle. You use your questions to basically argue your case rhetorically, to paint a picture for the judge or jury. The first two are the real workhorses, but all three make cross-examination a seriously formidable weapon in the courtroom.
And right there, that's the problem, isn't it? When a lawyer has that much power to suggest things and poke holes in a story, what stops them from playing dirty? What keeps them from hinting at something really damaging without ever giving the witness a chance to actually defend themselves?
Well, this is exactly where the legal system puts up a big, bright red stop sign. There's a rule designed specifically to prevent these kinds of surprise attacks, these courtroom ambushes that are more about winning at all costs than about being fair. There's this fantastic quote from Alexander Pope that a judge once used, and it just nails the problem. A lawyer who is willing to wound and yet afraid to strike. It perfectly describes this tactic of dropping little hints, making these dark suggestions, but never actually coming out and accusing the witness directly. They want all the damage to the witness's credibility without ever asking a question that the witness can actually answer and explain. It's a sneaky tactic. And the solution, the rule against this tactic, has a name. It's called the rule in Browne v. Dunn. Now, I know it doesn't sound very flashy, but I promise you, this rule is one of the absolute cornerstones of a fair trial. So what does it actually mean? Well, it's pretty simple at its core. If you're planning to stand up later and argue that a witness is lying or that they're mistaken, you have to give them a heads up. You must confront them with your side of the story while they're on the stand. You can't just stay quiet and then ambush them in your closing argument. They get a chance to respond. It is the absolute essence of fairness. And just so we're clear, this is no minor technicality. This rule is a big deal. It applies to every single witness, not just the main people in the lawsuit. It's in civil cases, it's in criminal cases. And get this, it's not just a rule for the lawyers. Even the trial judge has to play by this rule. That's how you know it's fundamental. Okay, theory is great, but let's make this real. To see how this actually works, we're going to walk through a classic example that judges often use. So, imagine the biggest question in a trial is whether a witness, we'll call him X, was in Melbourne on a certain day. X gets on the stand and swears up and down, nope, I was in Sydney all day. Okay, so look at this first scenario. The lawyer says nothing to X and then later calls a surprise witness who says they saw X in Melbourne. That's a breach of the rule. Why? Because X never knew his story was being challenged, so he didn't have a chance to call his own friends from Sydney to back him up. Now look at the next one. This is even worse. In the closing argument, the lawyer waves around a diary entry that says appointment in Melbourne, but they never showed it to X. That's a total ambush. X has no chance to explain, oh, that appointment was canceled. It's completely unfair. The right way, the fair way, is the last one. The lawyer looks at X and says, I put it to you that you were in fact in Melbourne. Now the cards are on the table. X knows he's being challenged and he can defend himself. That's the rule in action. So the bottom line here is really simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You just can't build your case on a secret. You're not allowed to keep a trump card up your sleeve for some big dramatic reveal when it's too late for the other side to do anything about it. The whole system demands transparency. All right, so let's zoom out for a second. You might be thinking, okay, cool rule, but why are we spending all this time on it? Because its impact goes way, way beyond just one witness. It actually shapes the entire justice system. I absolutely love this quote from a judge, Justice Wells. It paints such a perfect picture.
He said that without the rule in Browne v. Dunn, the two sides of a case would just serenely pass one another by like two trains in the night. Just think about that. You'd have the prosecution telling one story, the defense telling a completely different one, and they would never actually collide. They'd never clash. How could a judge or a jury possibly decide what the truth is if the two stories never even meet?
So ultimately, this one rule supports three huge pillars of fairness. First, it's fair to the witness because they get a chance to explain themselves. Second, it's fair to the party they're testifying for because now they know they might need to call more evidence to back up the story. And third, maybe the most important, it's fair to the court. It creates clear, clashing points of fact so the judge or jury knows exactly what they need to decide. It forces that confrontation, and that's the only way to get to the truth.
So, is this the single most important rule in a trial? You know, you could probably debate that, but it's gotta be a top contender, for sure. It's the one principle that guarantees that even when things get heated, the real goal isn't just about winning. It's about finding the truth through a process that is, above all else, a fair fight. And understanding that, well, that's key to understanding how our justice system is supposed to work. Thanks for joining me.